Poetry is what gets lost in translation, says the poet Robert Frost. Poetry is what is found in translation, says the poet Octavio Paz. Poetry is not actually what I'm here to define. I can't tell you which of these quotes is right, necessarily, but I do think the use of the word translation is very interesting here, and very telling, because, in a way, all art is an act of translation. And if you listen to what these two poets are saying, that means art is not just a process of finding, but also a process of losing as well, letting go, which is far more beautiful than you might expect. Having trouble writing? Well, there's a class you can take for free that I think will really help. It certainly helped me. Creative Personal Writing, Write the Real You, taught by Ashley C. Ford. Check the description to see how you can get access to it and change how you think about writing forever without spending a dime. A big thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and giving us the opportunity to tell you about it. This class has been a really special one for me, and I feel really lucky to get to share it with you this way. Definitely go give it a try. In a recent video, we spent some time trying to understand haiku, which required us to try our hand at a little translation of our own. An old pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water. This was our attempt at relating the poem Furuikeya by the master haikuist Matsuo Basho in English. I'm surely going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but the original reads, Furuikeya, kairu tobikomu, mizu no oto. There is a lot of depth to this original version of the poem that we simply were not able to capture. And we're not the first to try either. This is one of the most translated poems ever, with over 30 different academically recognized translations and many thousands of less official ones. Furuikeya, Basho writes. Furu meaning old, ancient, venerable. Ike meaning pool or pond. And ya? I can barely say what this means in the language I'm speaking right now. It's untranslatable, an exclamation of surprise or interest, almost like a sigh of admiration. In our version, we replaced it with an M dash. It was the best emotional effect we felt that we could find, but it's absolutely not the same. You begin to see the problem. It's a poem that seems like it should be so easy to translate on the surface, but communicates so much in the nuance of its native language that we have to question, what kind of motion did the frog take to enter the water? A leap? A dive? A plunge? We have to wonder what the timbre of the sound created by the water was. A splash? A plop? A kerplunk? These might seem like frivolous things to worry about. It looks like an uncomplicated 3-line poem about a frog plopping into a pool. On the surface, it looks like the translator's job couldn't possibly get easier. But you'd be surprised. Listen to all these different directions other translators have taken. We get old pond, frog jumped in, sound of water. Pond, there, still and old, a frog has jumped from the shore. The splash can be heard. Breaking the silence of an ancient pond, a frog jumped into the water. A deep resonance. The old pond, a frog jumped in. Kerplunk. Old pond, leap, splash, a frog. Dark old pond, a frog plunks in. Pond, frog, plop. Someone even turned it into a limerick. There once was a curious frog who sat by a pond on a log, and to see what resulted, in the pond catapulted, with a water noise heard round the bog. These aren't anonymous attempts by nobodies posting on Reddit or whatever, by the way. These translations all come from literary professionals, world-renowned in their fields, with their own Wikipedia pages and everything. Which makes you wonder, why are these translations so different? And, more importantly, which of them get it right? I think the answer to both of these questions is complicated, because maybe there is no right way to translate it. As author Terry Teachout says, no translation can possibly be perfect. Every production and every performance is a different path up the mountain, and nobody ever makes it all the way to the summit. Translation is a process of 1,000 choices. How much freedom can a good translator take? Do they remain faithful to the literal meaning of the original or to the intention of the poet? How do they even decide what the poet intended? Are they allowed to change what they said in order to preserve the way that they said it? Do they bend the text to serve their audience? Do they follow their own aesthetic taste? Do they strive to preserve the poem's physical structure, the spirit of its meaning, or the elegance of its language? How can they translate both the way the vowels roll and the way the consonants crack using words that mean the same thing in a totally different language? Even the way the words look visually on the page is a consideration. Bashar's translators have spilled 1 million pounds of ink over the years trying to answer these questions in different ways. A frog plopped into a pond. There, some might say. But Bashar's poem is not that. It's a doorway, a creative expression, each word carefully chosen, that leads the reader on a journey of experience and discovery and returns them at the end to the beginning with a feeling of profound, meditative beauty. And this unnameable core of the poem is the most difficult element for any translation to protect. It's strange, isn't it? It seems that the deeper, the subtler, the more nuanced and profoundly beautiful the message in its original form, the harder it is to express well. Why is it that often the better the art, the more it resists translation? As 19th century Shakespearean actor Edwin Booth says, the best translations cannot convey to us the strength and exquisite delicacy of thought in its native garb, and he to whom such books are shut flounders about in outer darkness. Often, it seems that the more brightly a thought shines in its original form, the more a translator's hand dulls it. Translation is a strange art. It's a generative, creative force. It renews the past, brings distant places close, and allows thoughts and emotions to travel across the barriers of separate minds. But it's also the only art form that seems almost expected to create a product that is automatically flawed, unequal and inferior to the original. Translation has creative power, yet also an inevitable destructive power, especially when applied to the best ideas. As German poet Karl Wilhelm Friedrich Schlegel said, "What is lost in the good or excellent translation is precisely the best." Because of this, translation can be difficult, thankless work. The translator is an artist who serves many masters, none of whom are ever fully pleased. The ideas, the author, the audience, the translator's own artistic tastes, form, spirit, and beauty. What do we preserve? What do we throw away in this process? To save some, we must change and sacrifice others. Translation is like a woman, quipped Soviet poet Yevgeny Yevtushenko. If it is beautiful, it is not faithful. If it is faithful, it is most certainly not beautiful. Sexist, but on the subject of translation, surprisingly poignant. Translation is at best an echo, says English novelist George Borrow. Translation is the art of failure, says Italian medievalist Umberto Eco. But, maybe this isn't just about translation. The art of failure is a really resonant phrase to me, because I think it has a lot of application to art in general. As author Ken Liu says, every act of communication is a miracle of translation. And as I said at the start, all art is, in a way, an act of translation. And as such, we can, and maybe should, expect something to be lost in the process. In moving a complex idea from language to language, from nonverbal mental experiences to words, from an erupting emotion into music, from a composer's vision to a performer's violin, from a painter's mind's eye to the easel, from a writer's mind to the mind of their reader, something is almost always lost. It's the tax of creation. When you hold a spark of inspiration as an immaterial vision in your head, It is as a poem in its native language and its native time, a thought in its native garb, uncorrupted, irrefutable, untranslated, and untranslatable. But in order to realize it, in order to express an idea, a thought, an emotion, or an experience in any medium, we must give it form. Words, paint, clay. We must take it from the ideal realm of untranslated perfection and subject it to the constraints of a material reality, where forces like friction and entropy are at play. We must be willing to make it a translation of itself, less than itself. If communication is an act of translation, then to communicate, we must be willing to sacrifice. Which is difficult, because potential is free and limitless, and reality is, by comparison, a confinement. The poet Yves Bonnefoy said, "A poem is less than poetry." In the same sense, a song is less than music, a novel is less than literature, a theory is less than physics, a postulate is less than math. In order to give an idea an earthly voice, we must allow it to be imperfect, smaller and different than itself. Poetry must shrink into a poem. Music must shrink into a symphony. Possibility must shrink into reality. The frustration of the translator is the same as the frustration of the creative. Beauty, faithfulness, spirit, form. When we create or recreate a piece of art, we want to keep it all. We want to be loyal to our ideas and our glowing vision of their potential perfection, to translate every ounce of the power and impact of our own mental experience in its native garb onto the page or onto the canvas or into the clay or into the music. But translation is recreation and destruction. As much as we wish there was, I don't think there's quite any way around that part of the process. Have you ever been frozen in front of a blank page? Who hasn't? Sometimes I think it's less a fear of creating and more an unwillingness to sacrifice, to destroy your ideal vision of a thing's potential, to translate it, shrink it down into reality. Your precious essay, your novel, your poem, your picture, your music, your sculpture, your dance. Sometimes you don't even know what you want to make yet, only that it won't be as good as it might have been. You know, deep inside, that creative expression requires sacrifice. Yet, for some reason, you cannot accept the dissatisfaction. I think some of the ideas that are most worth expressing are hardest to put into a material form because, like a good poem, they are the ones that have the most to lose in translation. But they are also the ones who have the potential to become the most beautiful blooms. The same is not true for poems written and pictures drawn in the language of perfection, which is ultimately silent and invisible. Poetry is what gets lost in translation. Poetry is what gets found in translation. In order to find, we must lose. In order to create, we must destroy. In order to translate, friction is necessary. The process of loss, the frustration of what is not expressed, and the silence of what fails to be made understandable is part of the miraculous machinery that gives us the ability to communicate, to translate, to turn what we feel into what we say, what we'd like to say into what we have said. Every language is a world, literary critic George Steiner once said. Without translation, we would inhabit parishes bordering on silence. Only in the imperfection of translation can art and thought truly manifest. There is a small problem with that, though. Even if you know that the pristine fabric of your vision is going to be cut up in the process, end up destroyed and reinvented in ways you never anticipated, translated from thought to reality, that doesn't really tell you where to start, does it? How do you even get that initial material to translate? Well, coming up with really powerful ideas is not easy, but I do know about one thing that will make a huge difference to you. Some time back, I took a class that really helped me open up this side of my creativity, helped me find the personal fabric of my own creativity. It's called Creative Personal Writing, Write the Real You, and it's taught by the incredible Ashley C. Ford. It's a 7-part video series that will teach you how to write from memory, report on your own experiences, pull memories you thought you'd lost out of the past and into the present, create legitimate memories where there are gaps, share your work, and begin the actual process of using all this material to write more powerfully than you've ever written before. And thanks to our sponsor Skillshare, you can actually watch it for free. I personally would sign up for this course alone, but you'll also get access to thousands of other classes as well. Experts from pretty much every discipline have gathered there to share their knowledge and experience. There are classes on creative writing, illustration, fine art, animation, graphic design, film and video, pretty much anything you can imagine. You can even join in on live classes, connecting with other creators and teachers while you learn. After talking to them about it, it seems like the people over at Skillshare can see why we're so excited about this writing class, so they've decided to give you the opportunity to experience it and any other Skillshare class that catches your interest for free. This month, the first 1,000 Foundry fans who join the Skillshare community will get not just the usual 15-day trial for free, but a full 30-day trial, an entire month of free learning and expert guidance on all the creative things you've ever wanted to do. And right now, until the end of April, if you sign up for 1 year of Skillshare using our link in the description, you'll get 40% off your whole first year. There are links to both the 30-day free trial and the 40% off annual membership in the description and here on screen now. And I would definitely hurry because those free spots are going to fill up fast and this 40% off won't be around much longer, only until the end of this month. Once you've finished this class, Creative Personal Writing, Write the Real You, please come back to tell us the impact it's had on you as a writer. I cannot wait to hear the success stories. Anyway, that's all for this one. Thanks for watching and keep making stuff up. I'll see you next week. Bye!